The smell of my mother's famous pot roast filled the house, but the warmth of Sunday dinner felt cold against the tension radiating from my father's end of the table. My younger brother Marcus sat across from me, smirking into his wine glass, while my sister Jennifer checked her phone with theatrical disinterest. "So, Emily," my mother began, her voice carrying that particular tone of forced cheerfulness that preceded criticism, "your father and I did you a huge favor yesterday." I set down my fork carefully, maintaining my composure. "Oh, we finally cleaned out that disaster you call your home office," Dad interjected, chest puffed with pride. 47 years old and still living like a college student with papers everywhere. My heart rate increased slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. "I see. What exactly did you clean?" "Everything," Mom said triumphantly. "All those boxes of old papers you've been hoarding. Stacks and stacks of worthless documents. We got $200 from the recycling center. Can you believe people pay for scrap paper by weight now?" The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth. I placed my napkin on the table with deliberate slowness. "Which boxes specifically?" "All of them," Jennifer chimed in, finally looking up from her phone. "Seriously, it was like an episode of that hoarding show. Papers from floor to ceiling. How do you even live like that?" "The ones in the locked filing cabinets?" I asked quietly. "Oh, we had to break those locks," Dad said dismissively. "Waste of good filing cabinets locking up garbage. But don't worry, we kept the cabinets. You can use them for something useful now." Marcus laughed. "I told them you'd probably freak out about your important papers." "What were they, Emily? Grocery lists from 2010? Old college essays?" I took a slow sip of water, buying time to process. 7 years of work. Sealed federal court documents. Witness statements. Classified testimonies. Evidence logs. All requiring security clearance to even view, let alone possess. "You had no right to enter my home," I said evenly. "We have a key for emergencies," Mom countered. "And that mess was an emergency. A fire hazard. We were helping you." "I'm a 47-year-old woman with my own house," I continued, my voice steady. "You broke into my home and destroyed my property." "Destroyed?" Dad scoffed. "We cleaned up garbage. You should be thanking us. Do you know how long it took to haul all that paper out? 3 full truckloads. Besides," Jennifer added, scrolling through her phone again, "it's not like you're doing anything important anyway. You work from home doing what exactly? You've never really explained your job." "Court documentation specialist," I said simply. "See? Papers," Marcus said with a grin. "You probably just scan old documents or something. All that stuff was probably copies anyway." "When did you take them?" I asked. "Yesterday morning," Mom confirmed. "The recycling center closes at noon on Saturdays, so we had to work fast." They were very impressed with the quantity. The manager said it was one of their largest single deliveries. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. "You know what your problem is, Emily?" Dad leaned back in his chair, warming to his subject. "You've never grown up. Never got married, no kids, just you and your papers in that house. Your brother has 3 children and a successful dental practice. Jennifer's a marketing director. What do you have to show for your life? Boxes of trash." "I have my work," I said quietly. "Work," Jennifer repeated mockingly. "That mysterious work you can never talk about. It's probably just data entry or something boring and you're embarrassed to admit it." My phone buzzed again. Then again. "Aren't you going to get that?" Mom asked, annoyed. "It's rude to have your phone at the table, but since it keeps buzzing." I pulled out my phone. 12 missed calls. All from the same number. A number most Americans would never see on their caller ID because it came from a secured federal line. "I need to take this," I said, standing. "Oh, now you're too important for family dinner," Marcus called after me as I walked toward the living room. I answered on the 13th ring. "Reeves." "Ms. Reeves, this is Deputy Clerk Harrison from the District Court for the Eastern District. We have a significant problem. The security seals on case 23-1547 have been broken. The documents are showing as checked out under your credential code, but they're not in the secure facility." My stomach dropped. When were they flagged as missing? 20 minutes ago during routine audit. That case is under federal seal with national security implications. "Ms. Reeves, Those documents contain classified witness testimony in an ongoing RICO investigation involving interstate corruption. If they've been compromised. They were taken from my home office yesterday morning, I interrupted. Approximately 10 a.m. They were disposed of at a recycling center, location unknown. The silence on the other end lasted 3 seconds. Please repeat that. My family entered my home without permission and removed approximately 47 boxes of documents. They sold them to a recycling center for cash. I just learned of this 10 minutes ago. Ms. Reeves, do you understand the severity of this situation? Those documents are under federal seal. They contain witness identities, testimony from protected individuals, evidence in active cases involving organized crime, political corruption, and... I'm aware of the contents, I said. I authenticated them. The chief judge will need to be notified immediately. This is a breach of federal security protocol. There will be an investigation. Ms. Reeves, you could be facing... I understand. I need the name of every recycling center within a 20-mile radius of my location. And I need federal marshals mobilized to retrieve those documents before they're processed. I'm conferring with Judge Morrison now. Hold please. Through the doorway, I could hear my family continuing their dinner conversation. She's probably getting fired, Jennifer said with a laugh. Did you see her face? About time she faced some consequences, Dad agreed. Maybe this will be the wake-up call she needs to get a real job. The line clicked back. Ms. Reeves, Judge Morrison is convening an emergency session. You're ordered to appear in federal court tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. The U.S. Marshals Service has been notified and will be contacting you within the hour to determine the location of the documents. This is now a federal investigation into the compromise of sealed court materials. Understood. Ms. Reeves, the judge asked me to inform you that if those documents have been destroyed or if any information contained within them has been exposed to unauthorized parties, you're facing potential charges for mishandling classified materials under 18 U.S.C. Section 2071. That carries a maximum sentence of 3 years imprisonment and disqualification from holding office. I'm aware of the statute, I said calmly. However, the clerk continued, if it's determined that the breach occurred due to criminal trespass and theft by third parties, those individuals will face federal charges. Can you provide the names and identifying information of the parties who removed the documents from your secured location? I looked through the doorway at my family laughing and eating pot roast. Yes, I said. I can provide that information. The marshals will need a full statement. Judge Morrison has also issued an emergency protective order freezing any financial transactions related to the sale of the documents. The recycling center will be located and secured. Ms. Reeves, do you have any information about which facility received the materials? No. My family refused to provide details. They described it as a center that pays by weight and closes at noon on Saturdays. We'll locate it. Return to your residence immediately and secure any remaining materials. Do not discuss this situation with anyone, including the parties who took the documents. The marshals will handle all interviews. Is that clear? Crystal clear. One more thing, Ms. Reeves. Judge Morrison asked me to remind you that you've been a trusted court officer for 7 years with an impeccable record. She wants you to know that this investigation is focused on determining exactly what happened and who bears responsibility. Your cooperation is noted. The call ended. I stood in my parents' living room looking at family photos on the wall. Marcus's dental school graduation. Jennifer's wedding. My parents' 50th anniversary trip to Europe. And one small photo of me tucked in the corner, receiving my security clearance certification. I walked back to the dining room. 4 faces turned toward me expectantly. Everything okay? Mom asked with false sweetness. Work emergency? You could say that, I replied, sitting back down. Tell me exactly which recycling center you went to. Why? Dad demanded. So you can go dig through trash? Emily, this is pathetic even for you. The name and address of the facility, I repeated calmly. We don't remember, Jennifer said. Someplace off Highway 40. They gave us cash, we left. Why does it matter? It was called something green, Marcus offered. Green Valley? Green Mountain? Who cares? You need to care, I said quietly. Because those weren't my personal papers. Oh, here we go, Dad groaned. The dramatic Emily show. What were they, Emily? Your novel manuscript? Your diary? Sealed federal court documents, I said. Classified materials from ongoing criminal investigations. Evidence protected under federal security protocols. Witness testimony in cases involving organized crime and political corruption. The table went silent. That's not funny, Mom said finally. I'm not joking. I'm a federal court documentation specialist with security clearance. Those documents were secured in my home office under federal protocol. By breaking into my home and removing them, you've committed several federal crimes. Marcus laughed nervously. Come on, Em. You're really committing to this bit. The U.S. Marshals Service will be contacting you within the hour, I continued. There's an emergency court session tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Judge Morrison is overseeing the investigation personally. This is absurd, Dad sputtered. You're trying to scare us because we cleaned up your mess. You broke into my home, I said evenly. You destroyed locked filing cabinets containing materials you had no legal right to access. You sold classified federal documents to a recycling center. Those actions constitute theft of government property, mishandling of classified information, and obstruction of justice. Emily, stop this right now, Mom demanded, her face reddening. This has gone far enough. We were helping you. You committed federal crimes, I stated simply. Multiple felonies, actually. Jennifer's phone slipped from her hand onto the table. You're serious. Completely serious. The documents you sold contained witness identities in active RICO cases. If any of that information has been compromised, if anyone saw those files, if they've been processed and exposed, I paused. The penalties are severe. We didn't know. Mom's voice rose sharply. How were we supposed to know? You never told us what you really did. I told you I worked with classified court documents. I told you my home office was secured. I told you never to enter without permission. You broke into my house anyway. We had a key. Dad shouted. For emergencies. Breaking into locked cabinets to steal what you assumed was trash doesn't constitute an emergency. We're your family. Jennifer protested. You can't seriously be threatening us with federal charges over some papers. They weren't some papers. They were sealed evidence in cases that could determine whether criminal organizations face justice, whether witnesses stay safe, whether corruption at the highest levels gets exposed. Marcus stood abruptly. This is insane. I'm calling our lawyer. You should, I agreed. You're going to need one. Actually, you'll each need separate counsel. Federal charges typically require specialized criminal defense attorneys. My phone rang again. I glanced at the screen. That would be the U.S. Marshals. Excuse me. I stepped away again, leaving my family sitting in stunned silence. Ms. Reeves? This is Deputy U.S. Marshal Chen. We've located Green Mountain Recycling Center off Highway 40. The facility is being secured as we speak. We need you to provide a statement regarding the removal of federal court documents from your residence. I can provide that statement now if needed. We're dispatching agents to your current location. GPS shows you at 847 Oakmont Drive. Is that correct? That's my parents' address. The individuals who took the documents are here. Perfect. We'll need statements from all parties. ETA 12 minutes. Judge Morrison has authorized us to make arrests if necessary pending investigation findings. Understood. When I returned to the dining room, my family's expressions had shifted from dismissive to worried. Emily, Mom began carefully, her tone completely changed. Maybe we should discuss this calmly. Surely there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. You took sealed federal court documents without authorization and sold them. That's factually what happened. But we didn't mean to, she protested. We thought we were helping. Intent doesn't negate the crime, Mom. Breaking into someone's house and stealing their property is burglary whether you meant well or not. When that property happens to be classified federal materials, the charges escalate significantly. There has to be something we can do, Jennifer said desperately. Can't you tell them it was a mistake? That you gave us permission? I won't be filing a false statement with federal investigators, I replied calmly. That would be perjury. So you're just going to let them arrest your own family? Marcus demanded, his face pale. I'm going to tell the truth about what happened. What consequences follow from that truth is up to the federal court system. Your father is 72 years old. Mom cried. You'd send your own father to prison? I didn't make the choice to break into my home. I didn't decide to destroy locked filing cabinets. I didn't sell classified documents. Those were your choices. Dad slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 72 years. Emily, please. We made a mistake. We're sorry. You told me I had nothing to show for my life, I said quietly. You mocked my work, invaded my privacy, and destroyed 7 years of carefully authenticated documentation. Documents that protect witnesses, secure prosecutions, and serve justice. You did all that while feeling proud of yourselves. We didn't know. Jennifer repeated desperately. You didn't ask. You assumed. You dismissed me as a hoarder, broke into my home, and committed multiple federal crimes because you were so certain that my life, my work, and my choices were worthless. The doorbell rang. That would be the U.S. Marshals, I said, standing. I'd advise you all to cooperate fully with their investigation. I walked to the door and opened it to find 4 federal agents in tactical gear. Ms. Emily Reeves? The lead agent asked. Yes. Deputy U.S. Marshal Chin. We spoke on the phone. Are the parties who removed the documents from your residence present? They are. My parents, Robert and Patricia Reeves, my sister Jennifer Hansen, and my brother Marcus Reeves. We'll need to speak with everyone separately. Is there a location where we can conduct interviews? The living room, dining room, and 2 bedrooms upstairs are available. As the marshals entered, I heard my mother start to cry. Jennifer was frantically texting someone, probably her husband. Marcus stood frozen, his confident smirk finally gone. Dad just stared at his hands. Ms. Reeves, Marshal Chin said to me quietly, we've secured the recycling center. The documents hadn't been processed yet, thank God. They're being transported to the federal courthouse under armed guard right now. Preliminary assessment suggests most materials are intact. That's fortunate, I said. Judge Morrison wants you to know that pending full inventory and security review, it appears you followed proper protocols for home storage of sensitive materials. The breach occurred due to criminal trespass and theft, not negligence on your part. I appreciate that information. However, there will still be a full investigation. And Ms. Reeves. He lowered his voice further. The documents in those boxes. I've been with the marshals for 18 years. I've seen a lot. But the cases those files are connected to? That's some serious work you do. It's important work, I agreed simply. Your family had no idea? They never asked. He shook his head. Let's get these statements recorded. The federal courthouse at 9 a.m. Monday morning was exactly as imposing as it should be. I sat in the witness chair in Judge Morrison's courtroom, flanked by court security officers. My family sat in the gallery, each with their attorney. They looked like they hadn't slept. Judge Morrison, a stern woman in her 60s with silver hair and piercing eyes, reviewed the documents before her. The court clerk, the same one who'd called me initially, stood nearby. This court is now in session, Judge Morrison began. We're here for an emergency hearing regarding the compromise of sealed federal court documents under Case 23-1547 and 17 other active cases. Ms. Reeves, you're under oath. Tell me exactly what happened. I provided my statement. Clear, factual, unemotional. Every detail about the locked filing cabinets, the security protocols, the unauthorized entry, the theft and sale of the documents. When I finished, Judge Morrison turned to the marshal who'd recovered the documents. Deputy Chin, status of the recovered materials? Your Honor, all documents have been recovered and resecured. We located them at Green Mountain Recycling Center approximately 6 hours after they were delivered. The facility manager confirmed the materials hadn't been processed, photographed, or exposed to anyone beyond 2 employees who handled the initial weighing and payment. Those employees have been interviewed and confirmed they didn't read or copy any documents. Security footage corroborates their statements. So the breach has been contained? Yes, Your Honor. However, the documents were removed from secure federal custody and transported in an unsecured vehicle to a civilian facility. That constitutes a significant security violation regardless of outcome. Judge Morrison nodded and turned her attention to my family's section of the courtroom. Robert Reeves, Patricia Reeves, Jennifer Hansen, and Marcus Reeves. Stand please. They stood, all four of them looking terrified. You are each being charged with theft of government property under 18 U.S.C. Section 641, unauthorized removal and retention of classified materials under 18 U.S.C. Section 1924, and obstruction of justice under 18 U.S.C. Section 1503. These are federal felony charges carrying significant prison sentences. My mother made a sound like a wounded animal. Jennifer was crying silently. Marcus looked like he might vomit. Dad just stared at the judge in disbelief. Your Honor, Dad's attorney stood, a man in an expensive suit who'd clearly been hired in a panic. My clients had no knowledge that these were federal documents. They believed they were disposing of personal papers at their daughter's home, which they entered without permission by breaking into locked filing cabinets. Judge Morrison interrupted. Counselor, ignorance of what they were stealing doesn't negate the theft. Nor does a familial relationship create a legal right to commit burglary. But Your Honor, they were trying to help. By breaking and entering? By destroying secured storage containers? By selling property that didn't belong to them? Judge Morrison's voice could have frozen lava. I've read the statements. I've reviewed the evidence. What I see is a pattern of dismissive behavior toward Ms. Reeves' professional life, leading to criminal actions that could have compromised active federal investigations and endangered protected witnesses. She shuffled papers on her bench. Ms. Reeves, in your 7 years as a federal court documentation specialist, you've worked on 462 cases. Your authentication work has been cited in 37 federal prosecutions. You hold security clearance level 3, which requires annual FBI background checks and regular audits of your work. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And in those 7 years, has there ever been a security violation, complaint, or concern about your handling of sensitive materials? No, Your Honor. The court record confirms that. Perfect record. Until your family decided you were a hoarder and broke into your house. He turned back to my family. Do you understand the cases Ms. Reeves works on? The RICO investigation alone involves 16 defendants accused of running interstate corruption rings affecting state and federal elections. The witness testimony you nearly destroyed took 3 years to compile and put federal prosecutors' lives at risk to obtain. Mom was openly sobbing now. We didn't know. She never told us what she did. She told you she worked with classified court documents, Judge Morrison said sharply. That should have been sufficient to keep you from breaking into her home and destroying her property. Counselor, your clients are facing serious charges. The U.S. Attorney's Office is deciding whether to offer plea agreements or prosecute to the full extent. Another attorney stood, a woman representing Jennifer. Your Honor, my client is a mother of 2 young children. She had no criminal intent. Her criminal intent was theft and burglary, Judge Morrison interrupted. That she didn't realize she was also stealing federal documents adds an additional charge but doesn't erase the underlying crimes. Would your client like to argue that she routinely breaks into homes and steals property as long as it's family members? The attorney sat down quickly. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen. Pending the U.S. Attorney's decision on prosecution, you are each being released on your own recognizance with the following conditions. You will surrender your passports. You will not leave the state. You will have no contact with Ms. Reeves except through attorneys. You will each attend a hearing in 2 weeks where charges will be formally filed or dismissed based on the U.S. Attorney's recommendations. He paused, letting that sink in. However, I want you to understand something. Ms. Reeves could have been charged with negligence for failing to secure those documents adequately. Her career could have been destroyed. Her security clearance could have been revoked. She could have faced federal prosecution herself. The only reason she's not facing charges is because the investigation clearly shows she followed every protocol, and the breach occurred solely due to your criminal actions. Judge Morrison looked at me. Ms. Reeves, the court apologizes for the violation of your home and the compromise of your work. You're dismissed. Thank you for your cooperation. Thank you, Your Honor. As I stood to leave, Judge Morrison added one more thing. And Ms. Reeves? The Chief Judge asked me to inform you that once this matter is resolved, there's an opening for Senior Documentation Specialist. Given your perfect record and the way you handled this crisis, you're being recommended for promotion. The position comes with level 4 clearance and a significant salary increase. I appreciate that, Your Honor. I walked out of the courtroom without looking at my family. The call started 20 minutes after I left the courthouse. First Jennifer, Emily, please, I'm begging you. My kids can't see their mother go to prison. Please drop the charges. Please. I didn't answer. Then Marcus, come on, this is ridiculous. We're family. You're really going to destroy your own brother's dental practice over some papers? My patients are already asking questions. The gossip is everywhere. Please just make this go away. Delete. Dad, Emily, your mother is having panic attacks. She can't eat. She can't sleep. This is killing her. We made a mistake. We're sorry. Isn't that enough? Haven't we suffered enough? Look. Mom, I'm your mother. I carried you for 9 months. I raised you. How can you do this to me? How can you be so cruel? Emily, please, I'm begging you, please. I set my phone to do not disturb and went back to work. The U.S. Attorney's Office contacted me 3 days later. Ms. Reeves, we're offering your family a plea agreement. Given that the documents were recovered intact and no classified information was exposed, we're willing to reduce charges. Each defendant would plead guilty to misdemeanor criminal trespass and misdemeanor theft. They'd receive probation, community service, and substantial fines. No prison time. That's your decision, not mine, I said. We wanted you to know because they've each indicated they're willing to accept the plea, but they want you to, they used the phrase, forgive them. We explained that's not how federal charges work, but I have no statement to make regarding their acceptance or rejection of any plea agreement, I said. My involvement in this case was as a victim of their crimes. The federal government is prosecuting them for crimes against federal security protocols. My forgiveness is irrelevant to the legal proceedings. Understood. For what it's worth, Ms. Reeves, I've been a federal prosecutor for 12 years. The work you do matters. Those documents protect people. Your family had no right to dismiss that. Thank you. The plea hearings were scheduled for 2 weeks later. All 4 accepted the agreements. Each received 2 years probation, 300 hours of community service, and fines totaling $50,000 each. The fines were specifically calculated to match the average cost of recovering and resecuring compromised federal documents. Additionally, Judge Morrison added a condition. Each of them had to attend a federal security seminar explaining the importance of classified materials and the consequences of compromising them. I want you to understand, Judge Morrison said at the sentencing, that you're receiving extraordinary leniency. The charges you were facing typically result in prison sentences. The only reason you're not seeing the inside of a federal penitentiary is because your daughter's meticulous protocols meant the documents were quickly recovered. If she had been even slightly less professional, if the documents had been processed or exposed, every one of you would be serving years in federal prison. She looked at each of them in turn. You dismissed her life's work as garbage. You mocked her career. You invaded her home and committed crimes because you were so certain she was a failure. Instead, you discovered she's a highly trained federal court officer with security clearance who does work that actually matters. Work that protects witnesses, secures prosecutions, and serves justice. I hope you've learned something from this experience. We have your honor, Dad said quietly. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. Good. Because if any of you violate the terms of your probation, you'll serve the full sentence for the original charges. Dismissed. After the hearing, Jennifer's attorney approached me in the hallway. Ms. Reeves, my client asked me to give you this. She handed me a sealed envelope. I opened it. A letter from Jennifer, handwritten, 4 pages long. Apologies. Explanations. Justifications. And at the end, I know you'll never forgive us. I know we destroyed our relationship. But please understand we never meant to hurt you. We just didn't realize you were actually important. I folded the letter and put it in my briefcase. Is there a response? The attorney asked. No, I said. No response. 3 months later, I received my promotion to Senior Documentation Specialist. Level 4 clearance. 40% salary increase. My own office at the federal courthouse with enhanced security protocols. My new supervisor, a veteran federal agent named Teresa Martinez, reviewed my file during our first meeting. Impressive record, Reeves. Perfect authentication rate, 0 security violations, commendations from 12 federal judges. And I see you handled the breach incident with remarkable professionalism. Thank you. Between you and me, she lowered her voice, when I heard about your family selling sealed documents to a recycling center, I thought we were looking at the biggest security nightmare in years. The fact that you had everything so perfectly documented and secured that we could recover them within hours? That's why you're sitting in this office right now. I take my work seriously. Clearly. You'll be working on some of our most sensitive cases now. Federal corruption, organized crime, national security matters. We're talking documents that could bring down governors, senators, crime bosses. You comfortable with that level of responsibility? Absolutely. She smiled. Good. Welcome to the big leagues. I settled into my new office, installed new security protocols and got back to work. The work I'd been doing for 7 years. The work my family had dismissed as paper hoarding. 6 months after the plea hearings, I received an invitation in the mail. Jennifer's daughter's birthday party. A child's handwriting on the envelope. Please come, Aunt Emily. I miss you. I sent a polite card with a gift certificate and declined the invitation. A month after that, Marcus called from a new number. Emily? It's Marcus. Look, I know you probably won't answer, but Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. He's asking for you. I visited the hospital. Dad looked small in the bed, hooked up to monitors. Mom sat beside him, her face haggard. Emily, Dad whispered. Thank you for coming. I nodded. I was wrong, he continued. About everything. Your work, your life, your choices. I'm sorry. You're recovering well? I asked. Doctors say it was stress-related. Everything with the court case. The probation. The shame. He closed his eyes. I lost 3 major clients when the charges became public. People asking if I was trustworthy to handle their estates when I couldn't be trusted not to commit federal crimes. That must be difficult, I said neutrally. Emily, please. Can we fix this? Can our family heal? I looked at him, then at Mom, then at the monitors tracking his heartbeat. I don't know, I said honestly. You didn't just break into my house, Dad. You dismissed my entire life as worthless. You mocked me, belittled me, and committed crimes because you were so convinced I was a failure. It's going to take a lot more than an apology to fix that. What do we need to do? Mom asked desperately. Start by respecting boundaries, I said. Start by acknowledging that my choices are valid even if you don't understand them. Start by recognizing that success doesn't look the same for everyone, and my version of a meaningful life doesn't have to match yours. We can do that, Dad said quickly. Maybe, I replied. But it's going to take time. A lot of time. I stayed for 20 minutes, then left. Cordial. Professional. Distant. A year after the incident, Jennifer sent me an email. I got a new job. Marketing director at a federal contractor company. During the security background check, they asked about my federal charges. I had to explain that I was convicted of stealing classified federal court documents. I didn't get the job. They said someone with a federal conviction for mishandling sensitive materials couldn't be trusted in a position that required security clearance. I understand now what you meant about consequences. I didn't reply. Marcus's dental practice slowly recovered, but he lost his partnership at the large practice where he'd worked. Now he runs a small solo office. He sent me a Christmas card. I tell my dental students about you now. When they complain about difficult coursework, I tell them about my sister who works with classified federal documents and has security clearance and does work I'll never fully understand. I tell them that real success often looks boring from the outside. I wish I'd known that sooner. I send a card back. Just, Merry Christmas. Mom and Dad completed their probation successfully. The community service, all 300 hours, was served at a legal aid clinic helping low-income families with document preparation. Dad said it gave him a new appreciation for proper legal paperwork. They have Sunday dinners still. Just the 2 of them now, usually. Sometimes Marcus joins them. Jennifer occasionally. They invited me once, tentatively. I declined politely but sent a fruit basket. As for me, I work in my enhanced security office at the federal courthouse. I authenticate documents that help convict criminals, protect witnesses, and serve justice. I have level 4 security clearance, which means I can't talk about most of my work at parties. I'm fine with that. My family finally understands that I'm not a hoarder with a paper problem. I'm a federal court officer doing important work. They learned that lesson the hard way through federal charges, criminal records, and consequences that will follow them for years. Last week, Judge Morrison stopped by my office. "Reeves, that authentication work you did on the Williams corruption case? Brilliant. The defense tried to challenge the document chain of custody, and your records were so perfect they had no angle. We got a conviction on all counts. 17 defendants going to federal prison because of your work. Just doing my job, Your Honor. You do it extraordinarily well. Keep it up." I went back to my computer, to the rows of files requiring authentication, to the careful work of documentation and verification. The work my family once sold for $200 at a recycling center. The work that, as it turns out, is worth a lot more than that. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "This is Jennifer. I know you probably won't respond. But I wanted you to know that I tell my kids about you. I tell them their Aunt Emily is someone really important who does work that matters. I tell them that I was wrong about her and that being wrong hurt everyone. I tell them to respect people's work even when they don't understand it. I hope someday you'll let them meet you properly. I want them to have a role model like you." I read the text twice. Then I archived it and got back to work. Maybe someday I'll respond. Maybe someday I'll let my family back into my life fully. Maybe. But for now, I have sealed federal court documents to authenticate, witnesses to protect, justice to serve, and a family who finally learned that worthless papers can sometimes be the most valuable documents in the world.